Good morning, everybody. It's 20 past 8. I'm down to my office in Warkworth here. I've got an appointment at 9 o'clock this morning, and then some paperwork to tie up with my out-of-parliamentary staff, and then I'm down to Wellington because I have an event with the PPTA this evening. Once I've done that, I'll actually go back to the airport and fly back, as I have an appointment at 8:30 tomorrow morning here in Warkworth. Yesterday, one of the things I forgot to mention was that I had flown up from Wellington on Monday morning so that I could sit on the Select Committee hearings for the Point England Reserve situation, which is it's a piece of legislation the government's putting through, which would allow 300 houses to be built on the Point England Reserve. And what's quite clever about what the government has done is that they have intertwined that piece of legislation that would allow for part of the reserve to be taken, not have the Resource Management Act apply to this particular housing development, completely ignore the Unitary Plan of Auckland, and completely ignore the wishes of the local people around the Point England Reserve. But they have tied it in with a treaty settlement. So that now what you've got is a treaty settlement that Ngāti Paoa have been working on, or trying to work with the government on, for 7 years. And last year the government decided to show up and say, well, okay, everything else you've offered or everything else you've suggested we have rejected, but here you go, you can do this. You can buy this piece of land you can buy this piece of land and you can build 300 houses on it. 20% of them will be social housing, 20% of them must be affordable housing, but 60% of them will be on the open market. Now, this is an area that has social deprivation scores of 9. They're going to have another 10 to 20,000 people in there in a very short space of time in the scheme of things. And this is the largest piece of open space that is underdeveloped and undeveloped, which is not all open space has to be developed, let's be clear. So this is the largest piece of open space that this community has. And this government has decided to override all other procedures and put in a piece of legislation that would take this land and allow a housing development on it. Now, the piece of legislation we're talking about doesn't mention Ngāti Paoa, and it doesn't mention Māori or the settlement. That's something that the government has talked downstream to Ngāti Paoa about. So it is possible, if this piece of legislation passes into law, that the government could change its mind on its settlement with Ngāti Paoa. But now it's got a piece of legislation that will allow it to take the land and build 300 houses on it, and take this very large, undeveloped, partially developed, but very well used open space from this community. It was a fascinating Select Committee. It was fascinating. The presenters for both Ngāti Paoa and the other community presenters knew their stuff and were really invested in their communities. And it just looks like another situation where the government has gone in and is using the divide and rule tactic to get what they want at out the other side. And it just strikes me, 60% of these houses in this poorest area will be at full market value. And of course, they'll have sea views. Interesting. Bye.